AITA for refusing to support my ex-wife's husband after she mocked me? I'm James, 40, and my ex-wife, Melissa, is the same woman who spent the last few years telling people she had to leave me because I made her life feel small. I used to be the guy who fixed the dishwasher at midnight, remembered everyone's coffee order, and kept quiet when a joke at my expense was easier than an argument. For a long time, I thought staying calm meant I was being mature. Looking back, I think I was also giving her permission to turn me into a punchline. Melissa and I were married long enough for people to think they knew the whole story. They didn't. They knew the version Melissa liked to tell at dinners, over drinks, and in the old group chat that somehow never died, even after half the people in it stopped liking each other. In the beginning, I honestly thought our differences balanced each other out. Melissa loved rooms full of people. She liked nice dinners, good lighting, birthday posts with long captions, and being admired by people who barely knew what her bad days looked like. I was quieter. I liked plans that made sense 6 months from now, not just 5 minutes from now. I liked paying bills early, checking warranties, keeping arguments inside the house, and not turning private pain into public entertainment. At first, she called that dependable. Then she called it boring. Then she called it embarrassing. The change was slow enough that I didn't notice it all at once. It started with little corrections at dinner. James means it in a simpler way, she would say, laughing as if she were helping me. Or, he's not really a risk taker. He likes things safe. If I ordered something plain, she made a joke. If I told a story without making myself sound impressive, she'd jump in and polish it until it barely sounded like me. If someone complimented me for being steady, she would tilt her head and say, "That's definitely one word for it." People laughed because Melissa knew how to make cruelty sound like charm. She never swung hard at first. She tapped. She smiled. She let everyone think I was in on the joke. I wasn't. But I also didn't fight her in front of people. I hated public arguments. I hated the way a room changed when a couple decided to bleed all over the table. So I'd smile tightly, change the subject, and tell myself I was choosing peace. By the final year of our marriage, Melissa had turned my steadiness into a flaw she could perform. If I said we should wait before taking on another big expense, I was small-minded. If I didn't want to chase whatever shiny idea had caught her attention that week, I lacked ambition. If I stayed calm when she tried to provoke me, I was weak. Once, during a dinner with Brooke and 2 other friends, Melissa said, "James is built for support roles. It's actually sweet in a way." Brooke lifted her wine glass and laughed. Every star needs a stage manager. Everyone chuckled. I remember staring at the little ring of water under my glass and thinking, say something, anything. But the words stayed behind my teeth. On the drive home, I told Melissa that joke bothered me. She stared out the windshield and said, "You always take things so personally." It was about me. "It was a joke, James. You keep making the same joke." She sighed like I had asked her to carry a sofa up 3 flights of stairs. Maybe if you gave people something else to say, they would. That was Melissa at her sharpest. She never just insulted you. She made it sound like you had failed to become someone worth respecting. When we finally divorced, I didn't fight dirty. I could have. There were things I knew, financial mistakes she had made, debts she had hidden until they were suddenly our problem, messages she sent after the separation asking me to cover payments because she didn't want anyone to know how messy things had gotten. I had paperwork, screenshots, transfer records, all of it. But I didn't want to turn the divorce into a public sport. So when Melissa told people I had held her back, I stayed quiet. When she said she had outgrown a small life, I stayed quiet. When I heard from an old friend that she was telling people I had taken from her in the divorce, I still stayed quiet. Even though the truth was that I had waived claims I could have made and quietly covered shared debt, so she wouldn't be embarrassed in front of the same people now calling me bitter. I told myself anyone who mattered would ask me directly. Almost nobody did. The old friend group didn't cut me off dramatically. That would have been easier to respect. They just got colder. Invitations stopped coming. Messages were shorter. In the group chat, people replied around me instead of to me. Brooke stayed glued to Melissa's side, laughing at every little post-divorce freedom joke like she was being paid to keep the mood up. Marcus was one of the few who didn't buy the performance. Marcus had known me before Melissa, during Melissa, and after Melissa. He was blunt in a way that sometimes made me want to throw a napkin at him, but he was loyal. He didn't dress up the truth to make it easier to swallow. One night, A few weeks before the fundraiser dinner, he came over with takeout and found me scrolling through an invitation on my phone. It was for a private room dinner tied to a small fundraiser. Elaine was helping organize it. Elaine was older than most of us, kind but not soft, and she had always been the type to notice when the room got mean. She had sent me a personal message after the formal invite. "James, I know the group got complicated, but I'd really like you there. No pressure." Marcus read it over my shoulder and made a face. "Melissa going?" he asked. "She's on the sponsor list with Grant." Grant was her new husband. I had only met him once in passing. Polished. Expensive watch. Firm handshake. The kind of guy who says your name twice in a conversation like he had read a book about influence. Marcus leaned back in my kitchen chair. "Then it's not a dinner. It's a stage." "That's dramatic." "You married dramatic." I gave him a look. He held up both hands. "I'm not saying don't go. Elaine's good people. I'm saying go with your eyes open. Melissa doesn't reconnect. She performs. I can handle a few jokes. You shouldn't have to handle being publicly sanded down every time she needs applause." I didn't answer. Marcus pointed a plastic fork at me. "You don't need to outshout her. That's not you. But stop confusing silence with dignity when it costs you your name." That landed harder than I wanted it to. I asked, "So what do you suggest?" "Go if you want. Leave if she turns it into a stage. And don't wrestle for the microphone. Just make sure the record is clean." At the time, I thought he meant emotionally. I didn't know how literal that advice would become. The night of the dinner, I almost turned around in the parking lot. Through the front windows, I could see warm lights, people in jackets and dresses, and a little check-in table near the entrance with name tags lined up in neat rows. It looked harmless from the outside, which is how a lot of bad memories look until you step back into them. I walked in anyway. Elaine spotted me before I had time to regret it. "James," she said, touching my arm lightly. "I'm so glad you came. Thanks for inviting me. I mean it. I know this group got complicated." That was Elaine's way of saying she knew people had behaved badly, but she wasn't ready to accuse anyone without seeing it herself. I didn't hold that against her. Most people don't chase down the truth when the lie is easier to digest. The private room had a long table set with printed menus, folded napkins, place cards, and donation envelopes tucked beside each water glass. There were small flower arrangements down the center and a stack of fundraiser packets near each seat. People stood in little clusters, doing that awkward pre-dinner small talk where everyone pretends not to notice who is avoiding whom. Then I saw the seating chart. My name was near the middle of the table. Melissa and Grant were directly across from me. Elaine saw my eyes stop on the card and winced just a little. "I didn't make the final seating list," she said quietly. "It's fine." She looked like she didn't believe me, which was fair. I didn't fully believe me either. Melissa was already there, one hand on Grant's arm, laughing at something Brooke had said. She looked comfortable. Not happy, exactly, but in control. Melissa always looked best when she believed she had the room arranged in her favor. When she saw me, her smile paused for half a second before returning, brighter than before. "James," she said. "Wow, I wasn't sure you'd come. Elaine invited me." "How nice." Grant offered his hand across the space between us. "Good to see you again, James." "You too." His grip was firm, almost performatively so. He looked me over quickly, not rudely enough for anyone else to call it rude, but enough that I felt the measurement happening. Brooke leaned in, her wine glass already in hand. "This is almost like old times." "Not exactly," I said. Her smile tightened. "Still serious, huh?" I sat down before I said something sharper. For the first 20 minutes, the dinner was normal in the way uncomfortable dinners are. People asked about work without really wanting answers. Someone complained about parking. Someone else talked about a delayed flight. Servers came in with appetizers, and everyone got busy passing plates and pretending the table didn't have a fault line running straight down the middle. Melissa waited until the first round of laughter had loosened everyone up. Grant was talking about the fundraiser's goals, something about backing a community project with private support. He sounded practiced, confident. He had a packet open in front of him, one finger resting near the sponsor list. Melissa smiled across the table at me. James was always more comfortable with this kind of thing from the background. A few people chuckled softly. I took a sip of water. "Depends on the thing." "Oh, I don't mean it badly," she said, placing a hand over her chest. "You know that. You were always the behind-the-scenes type." Brooke jumped in. Some people are just better at keeping the lights on while other people do the big scary stuff. There it was. The first little tap. I looked at Brooke. That's one way to put it. She laughed too loudly, like I had made a joke with her instead of refusing to become one. Grant watched the exchange with a polite smile. I could tell he had heard these stories before. Not the full stories. Melissa's stories. The ones where I was dull but useful, safe but forgettable, kind but unimpressive. The starter husband, she had survived on her way to someone better. Melissa kept going in small doses. When someone mentioned planning an event, she said, James would have had a spreadsheet for the napkins. When another person talked about taking risks, she tilted her head at me and said, some people want a bigger life. Some people want a quiet one. Both are valid. The words were harmless by themselves. That was the trick. If I reacted, I looked sensitive. If I stayed quiet, the narrative held. So I watched. I watched who laughed because they thought it was funny and who laughed because everyone else did. I watched Elaine's smile fade. I watched Grant grow a little more comfortable each time Melissa landed a comment, and I didn't throw one back. Then I noticed the packet in front of him. Not the whole thing at first. Just the project name printed in bold on the second page. I knew that name. I had seen it 3 weeks earlier in a pitch deck forwarded to the private funding group I worked with. I wasn't the loudest person in that group, and I liked it that way. I didn't put it in my bio. I didn't bring it up at parties. But on certain deals, my vote mattered. On some, it mattered a lot. Grant's project was one of them. The proposal had come through with a polished deck, a timeline, and a request for private backing before the next phase. I remembered the email thread because the team had been ambitious but sloppy in a few places, and I had asked pointed questions before we even considered moving it forward. I glanced from the packet to Grant. He had no idea. That was when the night stopped being funny and started being useful. Not useful because I wanted revenge. Not exactly. But there is a specific kind of calm that comes over you when you realize the person trying to make you feel small has accidentally carried their own mirror into the room. Grant tapped the packet. We're hoping the final approval meeting goes well. There's a private backer group looking at the project now. Melissa's hand moved quickly to his sleeve. Don't bore everyone with the details, she said, laughing. Grant smiled at her, but there was a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. It's not boring. It's the reason we're here. I just mean not everyone follows that world. She looked at me when she said it. I folded my napkin once across my lap and said nothing. Elaine noticed. Her eyes moved from Melissa to me, then to the packet. She didn't know what I knew, but she knew something had shifted. Dinner moved on. Salads came. Plates were cleared. Brooke told a story about a trip she had taken and somehow found a way to mention that Melissa had really come alive after the divorce. Melissa gave a modest little shrug. I think I just stopped shrinking myself. Grant smiled at her. That's one of the things I admire about her. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because Grant wasn't evil. Arrogant, yes. Too eager to accept the version of me that made him feel superior, definitely. But he was also a man sitting beside his wife, believing the story she had sold him. I could see how he had been shaped by it. Every polite question he asked me had a little blade under it, but he thought Melissa had handed him the truth. Then came the toast. The fundraiser organizer said a few words. Elaine spoke briefly, thanking everyone for coming. A few people lifted their glasses. It could have ended there. Melissa didn't let it. She stood halfway, not fully rising, just enough to gather attention without looking like she was demanding it. I just want to say, she began, smiling around the table, that nights like this remind me how important it is to choose a life that actually fits you. For a long time, I thought being safe was the same thing as being happy. A couple of people glanced at me. Melissa kept her eyes soft, her voice warm. She was good. I'll give her that. But sometimes leaving the wrong life is how you make room for the right one. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for wanting more. And if you're lucky, you end up beside someone who isn't afraid of ambition. Brooke clapped once, too loud. Yes. A few others raised their glasses awkwardly. I didn't move. Grant looked pleased, then looked at me with the confidence of a man who believed he had just been publicly confirmed as the upgrade. He leaned back in his chair. So, James, he said, still smiling, what do you do now? Still keeping things running quietly in the background. The table gave a soft wave of laughter. Not huge, just enough. Melissa smirked. I looked down at Grant's packet. I let the silence sit for 1 second longer than was comfortable. Then I slid the packet back across the table toward him with 2 fingers. You pitched me last month. At first, nobody understood. Brooke actually laughed again, but this time it came out uncertain. What does that mean? Grant's smile stayed on his face, but the muscles around it stopped working. I nodded toward the packet. Your project. The private backing group you're waiting on. I was on the review call. Melissa let out a quick laugh. Too quick. James, she said, come on. I looked at her. What? This isn't the time to exaggerate. The room went still in a different way. Before, people had been waiting to see if I would get embarrassed. Now they were waiting to see if I would get angry. I didn't. Brooke set her glass down. I mean, James always had a way of making himself sound more important than he was. That was almost funny, considering I had spent years doing the opposite. Grant's voice changed. Which group? I took out my phone, opened my email, and pulled up the thread. I didn't wave it around. I didn't read it out loud like a courtroom scene. I just turned the screen toward Grant so he could see the sender, the proposal name, the meeting date, and my name copied into the decision group. His face changed immediately. He knew. The recognition hit him before pride could block it. Wait, he said quietly. That's your group. One of them, I said. And on this deal, I'm part of the final review. Nobody touched their food. A server came in with another bottle of wine, sensed the temperature of the room, and backed out like he had walked into a family argument on Thanksgiving. Melissa's cheeks flushed. So you came here to embarrass me? No, I said. I came because Elaine invited me. You sat there waiting to do that. I sat here while you made jokes. They were jokes. Elaine spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. I don't think that sounded like a joke. Melissa blinked at her, offended that the room had failed to stay where she put it. Brooke tried to rescue her. Okay, but everyone's acting like Melissa attacked him. She was just talking about her own growth. I looked at Brooke. By calling me the wrong life? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Melissa leaned forward. You don't get to punish me for moving on. I'm not punishing you for moving on. I kept my voice low. I'm not going to sit here and let you rewrite my life for your own entertainment. Grant was still staring at the email thread. I could almost see the math happening behind his eyes. The jokes Melissa had told him. The picture she had painted. The man she had described as harmless, unimportant, safely beneath him. Then Brooke, because she never knew when to stop digging, muttered, It's not like she made up everything. You did fine in the divorce. Melissa snapped, Brooke. That one word told the room more than Brooke's sentence did. Elaine looked at Melissa. What does that mean? It means nothing, Melissa said. I put my phone down. It means Melissa told people I took from her. Grant slowly turned toward his wife. Melissa's voice sharpened. Do not do this. I looked at her for a long second. There was a time when that tone would have made me fold. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I was afraid of becoming the kind of person who enjoyed exposing someone. I still didn't enjoy it. But I was done being the lockbox for lies she used as party favors. I'm not going to tell them everything, I said. But don't keep that part alive. Brooke whispered. I didn't know it was like that. You didn't ask, I said. Melissa's eyes flashed. You always do this. You act calm so everyone thinks you're the reasonable one. I am calm. You're calculated. Tonight, yes. That quieted her more than anger would have. Grant said, still low, what happened in the divorce? Melissa turned to him. Not here. He didn't look away from her. You brought him up here. The room held its breath. I opened one scanned document on my phone, not the whole folder. I had it saved because experience teaches you not to rely on memory when someone else relies on performance. It was a settlement page showing the claim I had waived. Then I opened one bank transfer screenshot showing a payment toward debt that Melissa had told people I left her with. I didn't pass the phone around. I showed Grant, then Elaine, because they were the only two people asking real questions instead of protecting old opinions. Elaine's mouth tightened. Grant looked like someone had pulled a rug out from under him and then asked him to compliment the floor. I put the phone face down. That's enough, I said. I didn't come here to drag old paperwork across dinner. But I'm done letting people call me small so Melissa can feel brave. Melissa's eyes were glossy now, but I knew that version too. The shift from smug to wounded. The little tremble in her voice that made everyone forget she had been holding the knife 5 minutes earlier. You're cruel, she said. No, I said. Revenge would be telling them everything. This is me correcting the part you keep using to humiliate me. Elaine looked directly at Melissa. Did you know this when you were laughing at him? Melissa didn't answer. That silence did more damage than anything I could have said. Grant slowly closed the fundraiser packet in front of him. His voice stayed quiet, which somehow made it worse. What exactly did you tell me about him? Melissa turned on him like he had betrayed her. Are you serious right now? Yes. I told you my experience. You told me he was nothing. I never said that. Grant's jaw tightened. You said enough. Brooke suddenly became fascinated with the edge of her napkin. The shared friend group looked embarrassed, but not in a clean way. It wasn't the kind of embarrassment that comes from realizing you hurt someone and wanting to fix it. It was the kind that comes from realizing you laughed too loudly, and now there are witnesses. I stood up. Elaine looked at me with concern. James. I'm good, I said. Melissa scoffed. Of course. Walk away. That's what you do. I pushed in my chair. No, Melissa. That's what I should have done sooner. I left before the room could turn into a shouting match. I didn't look back to see who watched me go. I didn't need that image. I already knew the sound of a room losing its appetite. The air outside was cold enough to clear my head. I walked across the parking lot toward my car, loosening my tie with one hand. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. I ignored it. I had just reached my car when I heard heels behind me. James. I turned. Melissa was coming fast, arms crossed against the cold, her face tight with fury. Under the parking lot lights, she looked less polished. More real. Not softer, just less edited. You had no right, she said. I had every right to correct a lie about me. You humiliated me in front of my husband. You humiliated me in front of a whole table and expected me to keep helping you do it. She laughed, but it cracked halfway through. Oh, please. You loved that. You loved making me look stupid. No. I hated that it had to happen. It didn't have to happen. You're right. You could have stopped talking. Her face twisted. For a second, I saw the old Melissa, the one who could make me feel guilty for noticing the knife in my own back. You ruined my marriage tonight, she said. I shook my head. No. You built your marriage on a version of the past that couldn't survive contact with the truth. She looked toward the restaurant, then back at me. Grant is going to think I lied about everything. Did you? She didn't answer that either. The silence between us felt different outside. At the table, silence had been pressure. Here, it felt like release. Melissa's voice dropped. Why couldn't you just let it go? That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I had let so much go that she had mistaken my restraint for unlimited storage. I did let it go, I said. For years. You used my silence as storage for your lies. I'm done carrying them. Her eyes filled, but I didn't move toward her. That was new for me. Old James would have softened automatically. Old James would have tried to make the moment easier for the person who caused it. She whispered, You changed. No, I said. I stopped volunteering for the same role. I got into my car and closed the door before she could answer. By the time I got home, the old group chat had come alive for the first time in months. The name of it was still something stupid from years earlier, a joke from a weekend trip most of us barely remembered. My phone kept lighting up on the kitchen counter while I poured a glass of water. I let the messages stack up for a while before I opened them. There were the predictable ones. I had no idea. That got out of hand. I'm sorry if I laughed. I thought it was just old teasing. Then came one from a guy who had not spoken to me directly since the divorce. For what it's worth, I'm sorry we believed everything without asking you. That one I read twice. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. But at least it pinpointed the real failure. They hadn't just believed Melissa. They had chosen not to ask me because asking might have made dinner less entertaining. Brooke called 3 times. I didn't answer. Then she texted, James, I really didn't know it was like that. A minute later, Melissa told me things and I believed her. I'm sorry. Then, because Brooke couldn't apologize without protecting herself. But you have to admit tonight was intense. I blocked her number before she could send a 4th message. Marcus called around midnight. I answered that one. Well, he said. You were right. I usually am, but be specific. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten takeout, and warned me not to walk into Melissa's stage unprepared. She tried to make me the punchline. Grant asked what I do now. Turns out his project pitched my group. Marcus went silent for half a second. Then he said, Please tell me you said something clean. I said, You pitched me last month. Marcus exhaled hard. That's disgusting. I'm proud of you. Despite everything, I smiled. I didn't yell, I said. Good. Yelling would have helped her. Facts don't. I told him the rest. Not every detail, but enough. Elaine's question. Grant's face. Melissa in the parking lot. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How do you feel?" I looked around my kitchen. The glass of water. The keys on the counter. The phone still buzzing with people trying to decide whether they were sorry or just uncomfortable. "Tired," I said. "But lighter." "That sounds about right." The next morning, Melissa posted something vague online. Some men cannot let go of the woman who outgrew them. Healing means refusing to be punished for choosing better. It was exactly her style. Soft lighting. No names. Enough detail for people to guess. Not enough for anyone to challenge without looking messy. For once, it didn't work. Elaine commented first. Some stories sound different when everyone in the room heard the same thing. Then another person from the dinner added, "There is a big difference between moving on and rewriting history." The post disappeared within hours. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. A few days later, I heard through professional channels that Grant's team had paused their approach to our funding group. Not because I threatened him. I hadn't. I didn't make any calls. I didn't send any dramatic emails. I didn't punish the project because of Melissa, and I wasn't going to pretend business decisions should be made from old wounds. But Grant had apparently asked to delay the next conversation while his team reassessed internal presentation issues. That was polished language for. He realized his wife had let him walk into a room and insult someone he needed to respect. I didn't feel sorry for him exactly, but I understood the look on his face that night. It is humiliating to discover you have been confident with borrowed information, especially when the person who gave it to you is sitting beside you, acting surprised that truth still has teeth. Melissa tried once more to reach me. A text came from an unknown number 2 days after I blocked Brooke. "You didn't have to make me look like a liar." I knew it was her before I reached the end of the sentence. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, "I didn't make you look like anything. I stopped helping you hide it." Then I blocked that number too. What surprised me most was not Melissa's reaction. It was everyone else's. People who had forgotten how to invite me anywhere suddenly wanted coffee. People who had laughed at jokes about my small life suddenly wanted to ask what I had been up to. One guy sent a message saying we should reconnect properly, like our friendship had been misplaced in a drawer instead of casually abandoned because Melissa's version of me was more convenient. I declined all of it. Not angrily. Not with speeches. I just said I was keeping my circle smaller these days and wished them well. The old me would have taken those invitations as proof that I had been restored. I would have shown up, tried to be easygoing, and let everyone feel better about themselves for accepting me once they knew there was influence attached to my name. But that didn't feel like respect. It felt like weather. They had turned cold when they thought I was powerless. They warmed up when they learned I wasn't. I didn't need to stand outside waiting for the temperature to change again. A week after the dinner, I met Marcus for coffee. He slid into the booth across from me, studied my face for 2 seconds, and said, "You look annoyingly peaceful." Sorry to disappoint. I was hoping for a revenge glow. "I think this is just sleep." He laughed. Even better. I told him I had deleted the old group chat thread. Not left it dramatically. Not sent a final message. Just deleted it from my phone so I wouldn't keep checking a room I no longer wanted to enter. Marcus nodded. "That's probably the healthiest thing you've done all year." Probably. Any part of you feel bad? I thought about it honestly. I felt bad that years of marriage had ended in a restaurant with a phone screen on the table. I felt bad that people we once cared about had treated our history like a comedy bit. I felt bad that Grant had to learn in public that his wife had edited her past to make him feel like the prize. But I didn't feel bad for speaking. "No," I said. "Not for correcting it." Marcus lifted his coffee cup. "Good. The thing people like Melissa count on is not that their lies will never be challenged. It's that challenging them will look messier than staying quiet. They depend on the decent person not wanting to make a scene. They use your restraint as shelter, then act shocked when you finally step out from under it. For years, I thought dignity meant letting people misunderstand me as long as I knew the truth. Now I think dignity also means knowing when the truth needs a witness. I didn't want my ex-wife back. I didn't want her marriage, her friends, or the version of success she kept trying to perform for people who clapped too easily. I wanted my name back. And that night, I took it without raising my voice. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.